Hi, everyone. It's 2 o'clock, so I think we'll go ahead and get started on the workshop. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So this workshop is moving teaching online, really talking about using IEPs to guide online instruction for students with disabilities. And I am Kelly O'Neill Hickson. I actually teach in the Department of Elementary Ed, Early Childhood, and Special Ed at Emporia State University. I've been teaching in the Graduate Special Ed program now for 10 years. Our program is completely online. And I'm gonna, real quick, I noticed some chat, so I'm gonna open up my chat window. Oops, let's stop share for a second. Sorry, I apologize for stopping that. I'm gonna start back again. I just wanted to make sure I had my chat box. Please feel free to ask me any questions in the chat box as we go, and I'll try to answer them. We will have some time for questions at the end. Back to who I am. I've been teaching in the online graduate special ed program for 10 years. We moved the program online about 10 years ago. It has transitioned quite a bit from when we first started to now being very interactive with graduate students, observing students online, working with their students. So it's been really exciting. Today's learning goal will provide an overview basically on best practices and using that IEP to guide you. Again, this will just be a brief overview. Our learning objectives will kind of focus on getting ready for instruction, strategies for online instruction, monitoring those learning goals, and then any resources that might help you specifically with students who are on IEPs. So getting ready, we really need to think about some important things like technology. We need to look at our student needs, communications, and then really preparing for that first week, because that will kind of start you off on a good foot in terms of providing instruction to your students on IEPs. Now, again, this really is focused for special ed teachers providing small group or one-on-one instruction with students on IEPs. So technology. So thinking about the technology you might need. So a laptop, a good camera, technology. So how can you share those technologies that students will need with families and parents? Does your district have a plan? How can you access that plan? I always think it's really helpful when working with students if you have a backup tablet that you can prepare lessons on, or if you need it in the spur of the moment when teaching. You might also use a headset. You'll see I use a headset. I like to use a headset because I feel like it minimizes distractions. I also feel, you know, I can hear really well when I'm using a headset. I think it's important to share with families that using a headset for their children is really important in the online environment as well. Now, I will share, I've had some mixed feedback with parents when doing online instruction with younger children. Sometimes parents want to sit with the young child. They want to interact in the session. They want to learn more about the session. So if that is the case, then a headset might not be the best thing. So you can judge that with your families. So thinking about the internet and you know, wired connections are always the best connections. I'm on Wi-Fi right now. I know we have experienced some issues with being out in remote areas, rural areas where Wi-Fi is just not as good, internet connections are not. So really think about your internet connection and your family's internet connections. And I know that that has been an issue a lot of districts have been dealing with, is families that do not have access to internet. And so that's probably a whole nother training. Then thinking about some of the technologies you might be using. Maybe you're very familiar with Google Classroom, using Zoom. I find that using Zoom works the best when providing lessons. Sometimes Zoom takes a little bit getting used to, but you know, if you practice with your friends, practice with your family, then you become more comfortable with it. You can do some mock lessons and trial lessons before going live with your student or students. And then just any other software you might be using, whether you're using iPads as instruction, there might be different programs you're using. So make sure you consider all those and how those are going to work in your lesson. So when we think about our students who are on IEPs, we know that they have specific needs. So you really need to take some time to look at your caseload. And I think it helps to just chart it out. Now, bear in mind, this chart is just 3 students. I realize most of you will have way more students on your chart, but I just wanted to provide a sample. And so I might use my chart and go through each student. I might look at the minutes on the IEP to service the student. So how was I servicing the student before online instruction? How am I going to service the student now? How am I going to meet those minutes? And then also putting on your goals. Now I just included a column for a reading goal and a column for a math goal. You might have behavior goals, you might have other goals you're working on. So make sure you tailor this to fit your needs for your caseload. And then think about, if I have students working on the same reading goal, can I group those students together in an online session? Do I need to be one-on-one? You're going to know your students best, especially if you're transitioning from being face-to-face with students to an online learning environment. Are you going to group the students the same way? Schedules are going to play a huge role. And so really just looking at those student needs first will really help you to think about your instruction. And then communication. Communication is really critical. The first step you should take is talk to your families. So set up a one-on-one meeting with all your families. Make sure to talk about the service minutes. How much service are you going to be providing the student during the week? Also talk about the goals. How are you going to align the goals with your instruction for the student? And then come up with some available meeting times. You might use a meeting maker to have parents provide an option of times that you could meet with their students. This way you can then start looking at your caseload, and maybe you have 2 students who are both working on long and short vowels. And you might want to group those students together, so see if there's a common time. And so then you're going to set up your schedule. Now, schedules can always be tricky. We know schedules are tricky just when we're face-to-face in schools. So now it's going to take quite a bit of communication to get that schedule going for the online learning. Make sure, oh, I just got a great question from Helen. Is grouping students a confidentiality issue? Now think about it. If you are, you know, with your students in the building, you're grouping students together. And so you're still providing those services, grouping students together. You want to make sure, of course, all your technology is password protected. And I'm sure your districts have gone over all that. We've heard of Zoom bombing, things like that. But in terms of providing instruction to your students, you can group them together. So are your students going to require one-on-one? What about parent participation? Are you going to require parents to sit with students? Things like that. And so then also thinking about meeting with the gen ed teacher. So the general ed teacher is going to be setting up online sessions as well. And so you don't want to conflict with those sessions. You might want to make sure there's a break between a gen ed session. Maybe the gen ed teacher is meeting with the whole class Monday, Wednesday, Fridays at 9 o'clock. And so you might not want to set your online session for 10. You might want to wait a couple hours to give that student a little bit of a break. So always making sure that you're communicating that, possibly setting up that schedule that you're collaborating with the gen ed teacher. So maybe you're actually live with the gen ed teacher during the online instruction. Reminders. So just thinking about your reminders. Weekly reminders are great. Daily reminders are better. It's really important to be thinking about, messaging parents with the reminders, messaging the gen ed teacher. You want to keep in constant collaboration with those gen ed teachers to find out what's going on in their online sessions, what work is being provided to students, how can you help your students be successful in the gen ed curriculum, and then what are you targeting for intervention? So as you prepare for that first lesson, make sure you create that schedule. So you want that schedule that everyone can access, so everyone knows what is on the schedule. It is very important to keep that schedule on a regular basis. So if you are providing intervention, for instance, on Monday and Wednesday at 10 a.m., then keep that time every week so it's consistent for families. That way they can plan for it. You don't want to change your schedule around too much. Now, I realize that sometimes things come up and you have to make some changes, and that's okay, but it really is important to make sure you keep consistency. Make sure to select a lesson plan based on student needs. So if you have, and I'll share an example here in a little bit with you, but if you have a student who has a good goal in terms of decoding, make sure that lesson is specific to where that student is at. And so create that lesson using good lesson practices, review the lesson plan, practice teaching the lesson online, practice with a friend, practice with family. Just starting to get comfortable with teaching that lesson. Make sure to have all the materials prepared and ready to go. It really is critical. You don't want to be reaching for things or grabbing for things or saying, hang on one second, let me go get something. It's similar to when you're face-to-face in the classroom. When you come to maybe a small group table with students, you want all your materials there, because what happens when you get up and you go other side of the classroom to get materials, then you lose students. They're not engaged anymore. Well, that's going to be the same way with online instruction. Students are going to wander off and they're not going to be engaged. So you want to make sure everything is right there. If you're using software and different things like that, make sure that you are familiar with using it. That's really critical, because if you provide some of that just dead time for students, then they're going to get off track and it's going to be harder to pull them back on track. So just again, reminders, document the session, any of your follow-ups. So here's maybe a little bit of a sample lesson, or sample schedule. Sorry, I have a sample lesson coming up. But here's a sample schedule. So now bear in mind, everyone's schedules are going to look very different. So this is a really basic schedule. I just kind of wanted to show you how you might think about, starting your day with being online, using those as online office hours, checking your email, answering your phone, planning, having parents check in with you if students have questions. Some of your fourth and fifth graders might be emailing you questions. And so just be thinking about that as just that time that you're online. You're easy to access, and students can ask questions if they need help with anything. Then maybe at 9, you're going to do some synchronous reading groups. And so I'm going to group some students together. I might have smaller groups, I might have one-on-one groups. And so just thinking about the activities and how that fits with the student, because like I said, you want to make sure you're grouping students who have similar interventions. Then you might have a family conference time. You might take this time to check in with all your families. Now, I realize some of you might have 30 students on your caseload. So maybe you want to take some time on Monday. Maybe you want to take some time on Monday to check in with 3 of your families, and Tuesday another 3. So you can decide how to spread that out, but checking in with those families every week is really critical. So just kind of think about your schedule.
Right there,
you might have
right now.
You might have
right around where they're going to be,
other things.
And then maybe do the rest. I mean, cut that area first, because it's awfully shaggy.
Okay. keep going forward. Sorry. Um, you might have other things in your schedule in terms of, family needs if you're home, if you have your own children at home. So just think about how you're scheduled. This doesn't really show how you might balance that. This is really just about teaching your students online. Now, you might have, if you notice at 2 p.m. on Monday, Miss Miller might be doing an online instruction with her whole class. And so I'm going to do some collaboration with her, thinking about ways that you might teach part of the class in breakout rooms. How are you going to use your paras in those classes? How are you going to use your paras during your instruction? So this is really helpful to set up a schedule so you know exactly what you're going to be doing. I put on my schedule just 1 hour blocks of time. I realize you're not going to be doing a lesson for 1 hour, but this kind of provides a little bit of wiggle room in that time. Most of your lessons will be only 10 to 15 minutes, but I'm going to share that you're probably going to want to play some games and engage students. So your first session, just a reminder email, make sure everything's very clear, exactly how that student needs to get on. It needs to be clear for the parents to join the meeting. Any passwords, I highly suggest it is password protected. I'm sure most of your districts are requiring password protection. And then just any basic instructions about allowing cameras and things like that. Your expectations. I would put your expectations in that email to parents, to students. Make sure you're emailing both parents and students. And then, really think about how to engage, make fun. So we're going to start our synchronous lesson. And so we're going to do this in reading on May 15th, and these are our students. And so now I need to really plan for what I'm going to teach, how I'm going to teach it, supportive learning environment is really important. Make sure you're enthusiastic and you're excited to be with students and, really engaging them. Make sure your expectations are very clear. So are you going to keep students muted? Are you going to use the chat box for students? I know I can share an experience with my son doing one of his online classes. The chat box was just, students typing in letters and just not saying appropriate things. And so you really do need to think about how you're going to use that chat box, if you're going to turn it off. How are you going to have students respond? Are they going to respond orally, written, hand raising? You'll need to think about these if you're doing a small group versus one-on-one. And then engaging students. So using those hands-on learning activities, I'm going to show a video with using Elkonin boxes. So how are you engaging students? Do students have the materials? Read alouds, fun videos for students, games, ways to increase that motivation to engage in the lesson. And then maybe after the lesson is done, I've planned a game of hangman or a word search, or so there's some incentive to get that learning finished, and then we can engage in a fun activity. Again, make sure you're very organized. You have all your materials. Students, if they need materials, do they have all their materials? So materials. Try not to incorporate too many online materials during each session. Um, Sometimes it can get really difficult when you're toggling back and forth with different materials. You might have to try a couple different things to see what works, what engages your students. Think about their tools at home. This is really critical. When distance learning happened in March, I know a teacher who we have in our graduate program specifically actually had the district box up a bunch of materials and deliver it to each one of her students' houses. Those materials included whiteboards and chips and Unifix cubes. So some of those hands-on materials that your students are going to need at home, and they probably most likely do not have those at home. So maybe creative ways to get those materials to students. So as you're modeling and providing guided practice, they can practice along with you. So now as part of your teaching, you're looking at your IEP goal, so your outcomes. So what do you want students to ultimately be able to do? Make sure you're thinking about your grouping, your one-on-one, how you're managing that online instruction. So how are you keeping those students engaged? Make sure you have all those expectations very clear. Make sure students understand the technology. You know, that can be very stressful for students as well as not understanding the technology. And so I'll go back to that previous statement I made about not using too many technologies, not confusing students. Make sure you understand how to use the technology. You know, you might be using discussion in class, breakout rooms. How are you going to use your para support? Maybe you want to do a small group lesson and then have your para work one-on-one in a breakout room with one of the students to reinforce that skill. Maybe the student during your session, the student did not understand the skill, and so that student might need some more reinforcement of that skill. So think about all those various things in your lessons. Make sure you're providing that immediate positive feedback, and then also keeping that feedback for yourself. I'm going to share a resource at the end called Boom Cards, and it's a nice way to get some just quick feedback from students at the end of the lesson. So how are you checking for understanding? How are you monitoring that goal? How do you know that students are learning the concepts? If you're teaching long and short vowels, how do you know that that's increasing decoding? So just thinking about all those things tied back to the IEP goals. Another thing that I added to this slide is sharing lessons with parents to encourage parents practicing with students. I'm actually, when we do we're going to do another workshop in June, and I'm going to provide you all that information. That will be a 3-hour workshop, but I'm going to share some ideas during that and some specific lessons that you can actually share with your parents so they can reinforce those skills at home. I've actually had a lot of parents ask about resources that they could access to help their children at home. And so I think as a teacher, it's really critical as you're thinking about the IEP goals and supporting IEP goals, how can you support your parents and working with their child at home? There's also a lot of good resources with online books. And so, you know, how can I as a parent at home use these online resources to support what you're doing in the classroom? So just a reminder, don't forget about your good teaching practices. Good teaching practices in the classroom are good teaching practices online. Um, Make sure you are, oh, I just got a couple questions, sorry. Yes, you can get a copy of the PowerPoint, and then breakout rooms. So within Zoom, and we will actually, during the 3-hour workshop, I'm going to actually have you using breakout rooms and practicing with breakout rooms. But breakout rooms are small. They're, you might separate out your big group. So for instance, if I have 20 people on this Zoom session right now, I can break you down into smaller groups and put you each in your own room to discuss a topic, and then I can toggle back and forth through the rooms. So for instance, if I have a group of 3 students and I teach them a lesson, and I have one student who is just not really understanding it, I can break him or her out into another room, and then I can have my para go into that room, or I can have my para stay with the 2 students and play a game with those students, do a fun activity to support learning. And then I can do more modeling, more guided practice with that student in that one-on-one setting. So it's still using all the same Zoom meeting information. It's just smaller groups. So I hope that helps. But we will actually practice with breakout rooms during the 3-hour training. And so just thinking about modeling and guided practice is critical no matter what lesson. Making sure you're having students do some independent practice. Like I mentioned, I'll share a resource at the end called Boom Cards. That's kind of a nice way to gauge if a student understood what you were teaching real quick. You could actually use that as independent practice as well. Thinking about your universal design for learning, and that's been a big thing in education, and really how you're engaging students in different ways is really important. So are you providing opportunities, visual opportunities, oral opportunities, hands-on opportunities? We'll also go into further detail about students with some specific disabilities. If you have students with a visual impairment or a hearing impairment, we are going to address some of those issues in greater detail in the workshop in June, and some specific activities and resources to use for those students, including assistive technology. So it would be great for you to join that session if you're interested in some more specific ideas. And then also multiple ways for students to demonstrate their understanding. Just like you do in the classroom, you might have some students who orally provide answers, some students who provide answers written. And so just thinking about those multiple ways. So we might have a sample lesson on short E, and this is just and I know it's kind of small in here. I was trying to get it all in. Of course, this is just a portion of the lesson, but as you're talking through this lesson, so you might, as you are teaching, oops, you'll see you have your goal. Oh, I'm sorry. You'll see you have your goal and your outcome. And so we're going to be distinguishing between the long E and the short E sounds. So I might have some just word cards. I can email these word cards to parents. They can print them. If I need to, I can mail word cards. You could use whiteboards, interactive whiteboards, if didn't have the physical word cards. So you might have to think of some creative ways for materials. And so today we're going to review some sounds you've learned. So I would hold up the card and the vowel sound. And so you're still going to go through step by step. You're going to model for students. You're going to provide them guided practice, provide them feedback. So this might be just a simple lesson that you could work with your group of students. Again, maybe you need a breakout room and you might have to reteach the skill, but this just might be a sample lesson. Make sure you're scripting out your lessons. I actually think scripting out your lessons are even more critical in the online environment, because I think just the virtual piece of it sometimes can throw you off. And so if you have it all scripted out and ready to go, again, in our long session in June, we are actually going to be creating some lessons. I'm going to help you with some ideas for scripting out your lessons, using those IEPs. So if you have goals for decoding, goals for comprehension. So we'll look at different areas and how we can create lessons in each of those areas. I do want to show you another sample, and I'm hoping that this will pull up okay. So bear with me. See, this is the thing with technology, is sometimes you don't want to use too much. Hopefully you guys can hear this okay.
It has 3 phonemes, so we're going to work on the triangle line. Now let's map it out. Now we're ready to graph it. Let's start with the initial phoneme. The medial phoneme A, and the final phoneme A, rap. Let's try another one.
One thing you do have to remember,
Thing you do have to remember when you are using videos, if you're showing a video, this is when I shared with you, it is, you know, sometimes having your iPads ready with these videos can help, but think about yourself live providing this instruction. You might be just showing the student, and I'm going to stop sharing, go back to my PowerPoint. You might be showing the student what you're doing with the Elkonin boxes live online. As your student is also practicing, you want to make sure that they have the materials to practice as well in front of them. So they have the mat, they have the chips, they have the things that they need. And so then that way you can observe students being able to model what you're doing. So you're modeling the lesson, then you're actively engaging students in that guided practice while they practice doing that. And then having them do some independent practice as well. And then how are you going to check for understanding? Did they understand? You know, I always think it's really important to make sure you have flexible instruction. We talked a little bit about UDL already. You know, just sharing content in multiple formats. You might be using the chips. You might be using books online to do some comprehension. You might need your physical readers in front of students to do comprehension work. Make sure as you're doing that, you're always allowing your students to interact with you, interact with each other, providing that good learning, because you want to keep them engaged. You want to keep them at the computer, because what we know that students like to get up and walk away from the computer. We know that students like to grab their favorite item. Sometimes younger students like to grab their stuffed animals. And while if they need a stuffed animal to sit with them, that's okay, but you don't want it to be a distraction. So I think that it's really important. That goes back to your expectations of that online learning environment, being in a quiet place, having a place to sit and learn and really be engaged with the learner is important. There was, Dr. Reed did some stuff with choice boards. I just wanted to also follow up with choice boards because this is a really nice way to address IEP goals. And so thinking about your learner variability and the importance of meeting their needs in the classroom, you can use, a lot of gen ed teachers are using choice boards. You might need to make modifications or accommodations on those choice boards for your students to access. Maybe you want specific choice boards to meet their IEP goals, which is very critical. Choice boards can be posted to any learning management system. That's what's really nice about choice boards. You can send home versions. There can be low tech, high tech. So it's really nice to just provide some opportunities for students to engage in work that specifically supports their IEP, but also can specifically support curriculum goals and outcomes. And so here are just some samples of choice boards. We will actually go into detail with choice boards more in our June session when we have longer time. I would like to provide you some opportunities to create some choice boards that would work with your students' IEPs. And so, and then also some choice boards that you could provide gen ed teachers, again, to support student IEPs, whether it's in reading, math, content area, and curriculum. And so, you know, it's just a really kind of a nice way to provide students opportunities to learn and demonstrate their work. Some of these are, of course, going to be more interactive. They're going to link to different places online. Some might be, you know, very basic, like on the reading choice board, read your favorite book in a silly voice, or you know, build a cave to read with your stuffed animals. And so some real, you know, some fun activities to support reading in the classroom. And so then just some ideas to give families. And so I do want to touch on one thing real quick, just because I noticed in my choice board, I had spend at least 20 minutes on Prodigy. I'm not sure, I don't always, I mean, I'm not plugging the companies or anything, but I have found that Prodigy has been very engaging for not only my children at home, but other teachers I've worked with. Their students have really enjoyed Prodigy as for math support, because it is very engaging. And so maybe that's a choice for your students. Like on the 3rd grade math choice board, I had spend 20 minutes on Prodigy or eSpark. And so just thinking about some of those activities, maybe it's a virtual field trip. Maybe you're having students do some work with reading vowel combinations, and they're going to go on this field trip, and then they're going to circle all the animals that had a vowel combination, or I mean, just different things to support that learning. Here's a speech. This speech teacher did it for 4 weeks, and so it's one thing every day. Now, as a special ed teacher and working with your students, my recommendation would be weekly, but again, you could do a monthly, like everyday activity, check it off. You know, these are a lot of like I Spy, arts and crafts with regards to speech sounds. So here are some teaching ideas that I've been sharing with you. Boom cards are really nice. And I'll show you an example of one here in just a second. They're very interactive. There's a lot of pre-made boom cards, but you can make your own. There's a lot of click, drop and drag and click, so students can demonstrate their understanding of different things. For instance, like the long and short E lesson that I shared with you earlier, you might create a boom card for students to demonstrate if they understand the concept. So then they do some drag and drop. Interactive PDFs are really nice. The FlipSnap is a nice website. It's really easy to use if you want to create some interactive PDFs for your students to do work outside of your online instruction, and then it would give them active links on things to do. Active Inspire is by Promethean board. So if you're familiar with using a Promethean board, Active Inspire is a great software for you. I have used Active Inspire a lot. It's a nice whiteboard. Zoom also has whiteboard built in. It's just Active Inspire will have more features. So if you want to integrate that, again, we will practice with some of these different softwares and how to provide our online instruction lessons during June. Just iPad programs. A lot of teachers teach face-to-face with iPad programs. And so how can you integrate those iPad programs into your instruction with students? I know I watched a teacher the other day go through, she was teaching the alphabet, and so she was going through the alphabet using an app on her iPad. So she actually just held up the iPad to the camera and went through it with the student and engaged the student that way. Now, of course, we want to make sure we're still using multiple ways to engage the student, you know, with hands-on activities and things like that. So if you're always just holding up the iPad, that's not necessarily engaging them in hands-on activities. So really think about some of those different things you're using. Submitting work, and I get this question a lot, the submitting work. So with submitting work, we all know we have students at different age levels. This is really intended for K-5 teachers, but we know that there's a variety of skill levels that our students have in terms of submitting work, and whether they can do work independently, submit it. We know that general ed classroom teachers are asking students to submit work. I see a lot of Seesaw, Google Classroom, but just sharing, you know, the importance of submitting that work, even if it's just a small assignment. I'll just share a personal story with you with regards to my children at home and submitting work. Is my son, his teacher provided lots of lessons for them to do and different really worksheets and different activities and stuff, and then expected them to be submitted on Seesaw, which was great. But it was after about a week of him submitting that work and getting no feedback on it, it was really hard to get him to buy in to continue submitting work. And so I think it's really critical, if you're going to have students submit work, which I think is great, keep in mind, you know, the grade level, keep in mind, you know, your strengths and weaknesses of your students and what they can do, make sure it's successful, but make sure to go on and provide feedback, whether it's feedback during your next session, whether it's feedback on Seesaw. Here's just kind of a little example of Seesaw that might be an activity that you have your students do. And it can be a really basic activity. It doesn't need to be a long, drawn out activity. And so just thinking about making sure you provide that feedback when giving that activity. Okay. So every time, and Pamela, I see your question. I'm gonna address it here in just a second. So every time after you teach a lesson, just like you do if you were teaching face-to-face, make sure that you're thinking about, did you meet your students' needs during that lesson? Really reflect. Keep your data, keep all your notes, what happened during that lesson, what the student was able to do. It's very much anecdotal recording, but that's going to really help you with progress monitoring and tracking the student and how they are progressing on their IEP goals. Again, we are going to dive deeper into this and talk about some online assessments that you could use for progress monitoring, but those anecdotal notes are really going to help you make some decisions and guide your instruction. Do you need to make adjustments? Are you feeling like your collaboration is going well with the families, with the gen ed teacher? And that's another critical piece of this is, you know, how are you supporting your families? How are you supporting your gen ed teacher? Because these students, if they are in a collaboration model, will be participating with the gen ed classroom during online instruction. And so really thinking about, I know everyone has a wide range of how they're servicing students. You might have a self-contained model where you're servicing students 100%. And so you're really thinking about how you're providing all the instruction. Whereas you might have a model where the gen ed teacher is providing curriculum instruction and you're just pinpointing and targeting for intervention. And so your online instruction is going to look different. You might just be providing the intervention instead of the whole guided reading program or the whole reading program established by your district. Whereas if you're self-contained, you might be providing that. And then just support, seeking support from others, from other teachers, meeting with your teachers. I know grade levels, they meet. So meeting with those grade levels, if you teach K2 special ed, meet with your kindergarten teachers, meet with your first grade teachers, meet with your second grade teachers, find out how you can support them in the classroom, find out how your parents can support them. Here are just some resources I wanted to share. Again, I will provide this PowerPoint to everyone so you guys can have some, so you'll have all these resources. The read alouds are really nice, the stories online. I've sent these out to tons of parents, so they're just really nice stories for students to listen to. There are activities that go with stories to support learning. Maybe that is part of one of your choice boards, to read a, you know, to listen to a story online and do an activity. Board Maker is a really nice way to use to set up, you know, charts for students and different things. And so maybe that's something you share, maybe that's something you use when you're teaching online. Again, try not to incorporate too many things to where then you're really struggling to manage everything, but it is good to engage students in these, you know, activities, hands-on activities, things that are oral, auditory, things that are auditory, things that are visual. So I wanted to leave some time for questions. So I'm getting a couple questions in the chat box. So can you share info about teaching students to attend screens on the autism spectrum? So my best advice for getting students to attend online is really engaging them, finding out what engages that student, similar to what you would be doing in the classroom. So what were you doing before in the classroom to engage that student? If you have a student who loves, I'm just going to use the example, sports. How are you using some lessons that are sports related that connect it to the learning? So it really is still an engaging piece of it with the online. And so that's when I talked about really making sure you're using auditory, you're using visuals, you're having students do hands-on things, you know, just engaging them in that. And again, you know, my best recommendation would be short lessons, like 5-10 minutes for those younger students. If they have a more severe disability, you know, just keeping it to real short, quick lessons. And then as soon as we're done with this lesson, we're going to play a game and find some fun games. Or maybe your student loves listening to stories on tape, is very engaging. Use one of those websites to engage them in a story. So if you do some learning activities with me for 5 minutes, then we are going to play this game, or we're going to listen to this story. And so just really thinking about some similar ways you're engaging students. And actually, you know, using the technology and software to support some fun games. And maybe your students need to get up and take a break, so you could do a scavenger hunt with them. You know, just thinking about some ideas that engage your students, and, you know, even more so now in the online environment than when you're sitting at a small table with students. Also, communicating with parents and families is going to be very helpful in this process. If you have severe students, one-on-one is probably going to be the best way for that online instruction. Hopefully a parent can support and a parent can sit with that student. I know that that's not always the case, and so we don't want to depend upon that, but you can make some of those communications. It doesn't hurt to ask parents, you know, if it works in their schedule, you know, different things like that. So it is very similar with engagement online. Again, I think I might have mentioned this in June. I do have some specific resources for teaching students with visual impairments, teaching students with hearing impairments, teaching students who are more severe. And so we will actually address that, and I'll use some breakout rooms for you guys to learn some more very specific strategies. Again, with 1 hour, this is really meant to just be an overview. Seesaw, super easy to leave verbal feedback. I agree. That's a wonderful, Linda, having paras, wonderful idea to leave feedback. Just make sure that that feedback is being given so students see the importance of submitting that work. How do you handle situations in which students do no work at all? Parents have no time to do anything. They actually told me that during the last 9 weeks, what are some suggestions? So incentives, just like we'd use in the classroom to get students to do work. You have to think of fun, creative ways to engage them in games. So think about our students who, and I can think about my kids and some of my children's friends that will engage in some of those games all day long, like Roblox and Minecraft. I'm trying to think of some of the new popular games. but thinking about how students will engage in those games for long periods of time. And so what are you doing that to engage them in doing the activities and completing the activities? And then what's the incentive for them to finish their choice sport? Maybe you have an incentive system set up. I know some of the teachers in our district, like every week they took they had the incentive system set up. If students finished, you know, whatever the X amount of work was, or the choice board, then, you know, they received stickers every day. Teachers took around little baggies, set them on the front porch as just a little incentive for getting your work done. So be creative, think of things you can do. You may be a long distance from your students, and so that might not be feasible. So maybe there's another option you can do. Again, it's really engaging students and saying, okay, if you do this work with me, if you complete this work, then, you know, on Friday we can have a fun game time. We can play various games or fun activities, something that would be engaging for students, but you have to do X, Y, and Z before you get your game or your fun time. Sorry, I was trying to scroll down on my chat box. Mostly one-on-one reinforcement with food. Okay, Pamela, that sounds good. We will talk about some just various activities that you could do. For example, and I'm gonna stop share for a second. For some of those students who are very low, you mentioned matching objects, 6-month level. Boom cards are really a great idea for those students. They're engaging. They make for a short lesson. Let me see if I can pull up I had a couple samples I was using earlier. Let me exit. So let's see if so here might be, I know, here might be like a sample boom card, and you access this. I highly encourage all of you to go home and just play around with this a little bit. So thinking about like a real small activity like this, Pamela, for, you know, sorting by size and just having students drag and drop. And I realize that some students, it is very hard to attend. We know that when we have students like this in the classroom, it's hard for them to sit at the table and do their work in the classroom. So the same goes for the computer. Again, it's about that high interest and then parent buy-in. We will be creating some activities, hopefully, that will be of higher interest for students, and then you can kind of think about your students on your caseload, their IEPs, what they need, and a plan for the fall. Let's see. And then like and this was bunnies and tulips, if you guys can see that. But this might be a quick way to gauge if you're doing like the lesson earlier with the short vowel sounds, like having students make some words and showing you this vowel sound, and then that way you can do a quick, do they understand it, do they not understand it? Oh, thank you, Sally, for the resource for the Seesaw support group. Seesaw really is a nice way to engage your students in some activities, and you can make the activities very simple to, of course, more complicated. So that's a really nice resource to use. I suggest if you're going to use something like Seesaw for students to submit work, just stick with that one way of having students submit work. And we'll talk about that a little more in June too, because we'll talk about how you could set up your Google Classroom so parents could access all the materials and see the lessons. You can record your lessons and put your lessons up, so then parents can see you know, what was going on during the lesson. I have actually found in working with a couple teachers that they actually had their students reviewing lessons, and that was actually really helpful for student learning. And so it's kind of nice to house all that in one place. We are going to actually dive into this more about, like I mentioned, students with visual impairments, nonverbal. We'll talk a little bit about students with higher functioning autism. And so we will be going over some units you could do with all those different students. Like I mentioned, we'll be doing breakout sessions, especially during that 3-hour block of time. And then you guys will do some basically make it, take it activities. So then you have some things ready to go for the fall. You know, we're kind of still at the point of being unsure what school is going to look like. So yes, Sally, Seesaw does link very well to Google Classroom. So that's kind of a nice pair. My go-tos really have been Google Classroom, Seesaw, and then using Zoom for live stuff. Again, I do like the Active Inspire white Promethean board for students. It probably will work better with older students than younger students. The boom cards have worked really well. Your boom cards too, just a side note, you can use these for little, you know, younger children and older children. And so again, it's kind of nice because you can make your own. There's a resource of them. So I think, well, we're getting close to the end. One complaint was working with too many platforms. Yes, Pamela, I hear that a lot, using too many things. And actually, for my kids at home, one teacher used one thing, another teacher used another thing, and that was very hard to manage. I think that that's going to have to be a school decision, a district decision, and I really hope that they are provided some guidance on choosing one platform that everyone uses, and then it makes it, you know, easier on parents, easier on students. And so, but that obviously is always going to be a district decision, a school decision. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions or anything like that. I hope I will see most of you, if not all of you, in June. If you work with any other special ed teachers, know any other special ed teachers, please share, because the June session is going to be a lot more interactive. Again, like I mentioned, I want you to, you know, bring your caseload of students, bring your IEPs. I'll actually send out an email to all the individuals who have registered for that workshop, just letting them know I want you to bring your stuff, because with special ed, we know it's very individualized. And so really thinking about it, one thing that works for one student might not work for another student. And so we really need to be thinking about our caseload. If you don't have a caseload, you're new to teaching special ed, you're just kind of wondering how you're going to start, we'll also facilitate that too, because you'll have quite a few veteran teachers that can help guide you in thinking about some ideas. Shirley, the June session is $50. My email address is on the PowerPoint, and I will send that out to everyone. I will go ahead and email, because I have all your email addresses. So I'll go ahead and email you that information so then you can get in contact with me. Again, I'm always happy to do Zoom sessions individually if anyone needs help. So you can schedule those with me, and I'm happy to help in any way. Thank you everyone for attending. I really appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your day.